Bono. Hey, we got a guest episode today. We got a fourth member of the cast, Mr. Quis Evans, the educator, the model, the actor, the program manager. Oh, the brother from Warner Robins, the graduate of Fort Valley State University. Excuse me.
Yes, sir.
Bro,
appreciate that.
we're just excited to have you. So I wanted to give you that intro, and I want to jump right into the question because I was thinking about what we all have in common, all four of us. And I thought about the fact that all of us, it's one thing to get to a space in your life where you move to another city or another state where your cousin lived there, or you know somebody. All of us have moved to another place where we ain't know nobody and low key started over. So my question is, to start us off, why did you do it? What is the no, and we all gonna go through it. It's a three-parter. So why did this is for all of y'all? Why did you move there? Like, what made you do it? Two, what is one of the most significant lessons you've learned from that place specifically? Whether it be culture, whether it be the skill, whatever. What is the most significant lesson that you learned from that place? And three, somebody else that is gonna move to a place that they don't know anybody, give them one gem. So the question one more time. You moved to a place where you ain't know nobody. Why did you do it? What is one of the greatest lessons you learned from that place? And number three, give somebody a gem that is going to do the same thing or is scared to do the same thing.
Oh, you.
Hey, I told you. Hey, Bruno,
on you, brother.
First?
Who, me? Okay, cool. So my why, for my quote, the quote is, do you lean with it or do you rock with it? And so at that point of time, like, I really wasn't rocking with like where I was at. I was at Indianapolis, Indiana, which was a blessing because for my career wise, I really became an educator there. But just dealing with the snow and like just everything that was going on, I felt like I needed to be somewhere else. So it's either New York or California. So I ended up coming to Cali. Acting was my why. Like acting and modeling, that was why I was like, yo, let me get to California. When I was in Atlanta, I was on the set of The Game when it was on BET.
Yeah.
Someone backstage, I didn't even know. They just randomly came up to me, was like, hey, bro, you gotta get to LA. You gotta get to Cali. And I took that as that was God sending a message through him. And so I just took that and just ran with it. The greatest lesson that I learned being out here, one, I demonstrated a lot of emotional intelligence because now I'm in a place where I don't know anyone. I'm by myself. And there was a lot of things that I didn't even know that was built up inside of me because when I was in my comfort zone, they was never exposed. But when I was in an area of being uncomfortable, everything came out. And so I was able to deal with that. And also on the education side, the greatest lesson I learned is like learning Bay Area culture. Like when I first came to the classroom, I was hearing scholars say hella, hecka, and I was like, hold on, what y'all doing? Because in the South, like that's considered cussing, like in the classroom. Yeah. So it's just learning the culture and just learning how to communicate because we all communicate differently, you know what I'm saying, regardless of like, we all skin folk, but we all communicate differently in different regions. Facts. In a gym that for anyone who is like looking to have that courage to get up and get out, it's to go back to that, do you lean with it or do you rock with it? And then it's like put yourself in a position where you're uncomfortable because sometimes we have to go through that state of solitude to really understand and really know who we are as a person. And then we're able to thrive. And I always get the question, hey, would you ever move back to Georgia? And the question I always say is, the answer is always according to God's plan. But if I do move back to Georgia, I already know I will come back another man than what I left because I was able to gain so much that I learned from being outside of Georgia. So that's just a gem right there.
Solid.
So
I like that.
To hop in, my why. So I lived in Florida for about 8 years. The first 4 years, it was for university purposes, for education purposes. And both times after I left my institution, Florida A&M University, I was then led to Tampa, Florida, which was still in Florida. In both Tallahassee, Florida and Tampa, Florida, I knew no one. I was going in blinded. I was stepping into the unknown. Come to find out, both of those places in Florida chose me. I had no say-so. At the time in grade school, I wasn't even aware enough. I couldn't even see past grade school. That's not a vision that I had. So again, I had no say-so in where I ended up in Florida. But I then had the blessing of choosing my why as I stayed in Florida. And that was a blessing in itself, because a lot of times when we, ask someone their why, they're speaking from their heart. They're speaking from an intention that they had. But I was able to choose that why as I stayed there. And my why became, to really just find out who I was without the trauma that was attached to me in Georgia, to find out who I was without being attached to what I thought was the way to live or who I thought I was. And I figured out, and I was able to really create my own reality and create my own mirror, in a sense, where I was able to look back at someone who I was proud of, who I didn't even know existed. And my why was finding out that I had everything inside me that I needed to survive, to succeed. I just had to be forced into an environment almost where I knew no one, and I could only lean on creating my own why. And what did I learn? Man, I learned, one, that isolation is okay. But I also learned that just because you are isolated doesn't mean that you're healing. You have to intentionally heal. You have to intentionally want to heal. And just because you're running from trauma and running from situations where you might have known people in your city, that doesn't mean, again, that you're healing. It could mean that you're just running from your past. You're just running from those traumas. And I learned how to intentionally just sit in silence and to understand where I wanted to go and where I was. But also I learned that it's okay to not be okay, but you have to see how to proceed, and you have to see how to continue to walk in your own reality. And a gem that I would leave with anyone who is thinking about, moving to a city where you don't know, I say you have to choose to walk into the unknown, because when you walk into the unknown, you're uncomfortable. But when you're uncomfortable, you are forced to find out who you really are. You're forced to go within and find those answers that no one can give you but you. And you have to be able to go within to be emotionally aware and to, follow those visions that you see for your life as you get older. But you have to find out what isolation looks for you to be able to move forward.
My why was, I always felt like where I was planted wasn't the only place I was meant to grow. That I looked at my environment, I looked at my friends, I looked at the kids who were in the same class as me, and I noticed there was a difference. And I knew that if I stayed in the same soil as them, I would become them. And I just felt like there was a bigger, there was a bigger path for me. There was more to life than the soil that we were in. And so I've moved a couple different times to places that I knew nobody, and each time I felt like it was like a challenge, something different. It was something that could set me apart from, the people who were in the same soil with me. And I wanted to be different. I wanted to embrace what I knew was true already, the questions I was having. And, I know you can't get that growth without taking a risk. And so moving away is a very risky thing, at least emotionally. And, I leaned into it. There's a quote that my dad, I don't know the original author, but my dad would tell me this. He would say, what you touch, you change. What touches you changes you. God is change. And for me, every place that I've been, I've touched people and I've brought the culture that I came from with me, and I've touched them and they change. But I've also allowed myself to be changed by the places that I've been to. Like Louisiana was the first place that I moved to, and I didn't know anybody. And my God, that state changed me. The people, the culture, the hospitality. Like I felt that same struggle and that same historical racism that a lot of the South holds. But in Louisiana, like you got a really bitter side of it, but you also got a really sweet side of the culture and how genuine and welcoming people can be in to bring you into their home and feed you crawfish and, you know, all this stuff. And then, you know, in my latest endeavor where I moved to Mexico, I felt like, you know, the simple life is a good life. And I had a hard time making sense of that, coming from a big city, you know, wanting the Mercedes, wanting the 6-story house and like all of it, you know, just wanting the glam life, but realizing how much people find and how much joy they find in just their home. And so, you know, for me, a gem that I would give, you know, is the quote is allowing something to touch that touches you to change you, and recognizing that change is God, that, you know, it is you pursuing a better version of yourself, a more complete version of yourself. And, you know, bring something from your culture to the new place to help change the people, but also allow it the culture to change you too.
No, that's cold. Yeah, all of those. And that yours come out actually inspired me for mine. And I'll make mine short and sweet. My why really comes from a beautiful selfishness. And it's a quote my dad told me. He said, when I was going off to college, that applied when I moved to LA. He said, remember 3 things and you'll be fine. Remember who you are, remember where you came from, and remember what you're there for. And when I was deciding whether I was going to move to LA or not, it was to teach. Either I was going to do that or get my master's in nutrition. And I said, okay, God, if you give me LA, my number 1 choice, and teach for America, that's where I'll go. Because I had this idea. I wanted to be a speaker. That's what was in my heart. But I didn't know if I could do it, if I was capable. And I wanted to do it because remember who you are. I've been a Black boy that's been loved correctly my entire life. As Marquise was saying earlier, I've always been given those high expectations. 7 older sisters, nobody was letting me live below. And I was like, I need to give the same thing to the dudes I'm in the classroom with. Like, I can't, like, their time is done, but I can go into a classroom and give the same thing that was given to me. And that would develop me as a speaker. And that was my why. And that's what led me into the opportunity to LA. The most important thing I learned was, I think I'll take Nipsey Hussle. Stay down, the game gonna bless you. Stay down, the game gonna bless you. That if you serve people with creativity, you get put in positions of leadership. And that position of leadership builds communities. And I mean community for you selfishly, where people gonna love on you and people are gonna welcome you into the community. And that's the third piece for me. Really dive into the community. If you go to a place like Oakland, like take a dance class or something, like join somewhere you're gonna be mad uncomfortable, but you being uncomfortable builds community. They're seeing you coming from a different place and you trying to learn. Right. So whether it's a gym that you join, a dance class, an art studio, a walking group, a hiking group, join something, like Kamau said, that forces you to learn something about that culture. And you naturally being yourself, you're going to bring you to that culture. And it's going to be that beautiful exchange that causes you to thrive. And that segue into causing you to thrive, we're going to go into one of our favorite segments, your favorite failure. Favorite failure is exactly what it sounds like. A moment where life is lifing and you failed. It's not no pretend, it's no spin on it where this is a victory. No, at the time you caught an L and you were sitting in it. You like, what am I going to do? And then on the other side of it, now you look back on that moment and you're like, if that didn't happen, I don't get to be who I am. Like, that's one of my favorite things that have happened to me. So, Quis, we want to give the floor to you. What is one of your favorite failures?
So basically, when I came to California, bro, like I had the setup, the job that I had, paid for my moving expenses, came out here, and it was, to be honest, it was one of those schools that was very laid back and chill. And I got, like, more of the story, I got fired. But let me tell you what happened. All right, so coming from Indianapolis, like that school was a school of Black excellence. And I really became an educator at that school. Like the systems and routines were just on point. It was to a point where, I'll be honest, I felt like the rules was too strict.
Yeah.
Like, but before I got there, we was the #1 charter school in Indianapolis. And in the year I was there, we was in the #2 charter school in Indianapolis. And under the leadership of Kelly Marshall, she dominated in that field. And she got me right, you know what I'm saying, as an educator. So that was my first year of teaching. So she set the model. She set the expectation of like what I'm supposed to do as an educator. So when I came to California and I come to this school where it's primarily Latino, we didn't have too many Black scholars there. I was like, bro, what the fuck is going on here? Like, it's like students don't walk in lines, like, and then like when their transitions was wild, and I used to hear nigga this, nigga that, and I look outside and that's like, I don't see nobody who looks like me. You feel me?
Yeah,
So it's like coming from the South, you already know, like you get cracked over the head for stuff like that. So I was voicing these things to administration, and it's just like they wasn't doing anything about it. But one thing about it, bro, the kids respected me. Like the kids love me, the parents love me. Even to be honest, fast forward the day when I got fired, like a gang of parents came up to the school, was like, bro, why did y'all get rid of Mr. Evans? Like he was the only one who was basically teaching our kids. Like I was, because I had that model in my classroom where I prioritized the education, but it was a situation where I had to go out to the playground area to get a student. So I'm exchanging dialogue with the teacher. So I see her eyes go up. And so I look up, a baseball came. I was like, oh, wow. Okay. So one, the scholars were not supposed to be throwing a baseball. So I was just like, I'm not about to like be that one. I'm not about to mess up your fun. Like, go ahead and do what you need to do. But I said, hey, man, y'all be careful. I almost got hit with the ball. The ball came to me the second time. I was like, hey, man, y'all be careful. Like, do what you need to do. The ball came to me the third time. So the third time I walked over and I said, hey, man, like, one, y'all not supposed to be playing with this ball. And two, like my fifth graders are running, like, be careful. Like, I don't want y'all to hit none of my fifth graders over here. So the little boy had a little attitude when I was talking to him. So I didn't play it no mind. I was like, hey, just be careful. The fourth time that ball came to me, bro, I kid you not, like if a major league scout was there, they probably would have signed me that day. Bro, I took that baseball and slung that bit so far. Like, I threw it towards the high school. And then one of the eighth graders had came up to me, or whatever, like very aggressive. And mind you that his father, this was like towards the end of the day, his father was literally right there. He came up to me like cussing, woo. I put my hand up, like my instinct came in. I was just like, hey, bro, you need to back up.
Yeah, chill, boy.
I snapped, you know what I'm saying? So the administration had told me, I told them what took place or whatever. I got a text message, hey, it's cool that you don't come in tomorrow. We're gonna let you, know what I'm saying, have the day to yourself. I was like, hey, just be honest, like, am I getting fired? Because if I am, I could go ahead and pack my stuff now. So I don't have to have that walk of shame getting my stuff while the students are here. They was like, no, everything good. So I was like, cool. I went home, did my thing. So they told me not to come back the next day. I was like, okay, cool, bet. So then when I got there, I walk into the office and HR is there. So I already know what time it is. So they started the conversation. I was like, Mr. Evans, you're an amazing teacher. I scared, like, can y'all just get to the point? Like, let me sign whatever paperwork I need to sign so I get up out of here or whatever. And like I was telling him, I was just like, at the end of the day, I apologize for my actions because one, I should have demonstrated emotional intelligence in that moment. But if that scholar would have hit me with that baseball, there would have been no consequence. They would have had bragging rights for the rest of the year. Like, oh yeah, we hit Mr. Evans with the baseball. Yeah. Or whatever. So like I snapped because I refused to apologize because during that time my ego was high. I was like, I feel like I didn't have to apologize because they threw the baseball at me. And it's in all these instances I'm telling y'all about, this is what's going on. But in that
can I ask a question real quick? Did you cuss the student out? Like, did you cuss the student out? Like, did you?
I didn't necessarily cuss them out, but some cuss words came out.
Okay.
So cuss words came out, but it was more, I think it was more on the fact that I wasn't I wasn't being restorative of the harm that I did, because at the end of the day, like I shouldn't have tossed the baseball across the field. You feel me?
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's just like my frustration was, one, I didn't know the culture. Two, I was used to something that I didn't see no more, like with the structure wise. And then three, I felt like I wasn't supported from administration, because it's like I felt it was a free for all where kids did whatever they wanted to do and there was no consequence behind it.
Yeah.
And so a blessing came, because this was my greatest failure, because one of the parents, I forgot, she had some type of position with the board or something like that. And she spoke to Miss Jackson in West Oakland. And so when I came to West Oakland, I seen the scholars that looked like me, an atmosphere that looked like me. And Miss Jackson had some of those same values that Miss Marshall had in Indianapolis. And so I've been with that school since. And I'm still within that network. I just moved to the high school, but I've been with that network since. And that was like the greatest failure, because the greatest failure, right? Because it put me in a position where I was able to learn from my mistakes, but it put me in a position where it was a better opportunity for me after I left there. Because if I had not got fired, I still probably would have been at that school miserable. And then now that I'm in this position, it's funny how God puts you in certain positions to make you learn the lesson. So I didn't learn the lesson at that school, but now the school that I'm at now is primarily Latino. So because I went through that experience, now I know how to maneuver and do what I need to do at this school and build those relationships with those scholars. And also, if I do hear them saying the N-word, I'm able to have those restorative conversations with them, let them know the historical context of the word and why I shouldn't be using it and they shouldn't be using it as well too.
Thank you, Black man. Somebody got to explain to our Latino brothers, man. Somebody.
Yeah. And it was just something new. And I'll be honest, like I learned my lesson from that time, because I snapped when that took place.
Yeah. And I'll tell you this, you in good company. Because I think Zuri on episode 1, Zuri got fired. She was sharing her story. Yes, I don't know if it was me, episode 11 or episode 21. Like, I got fired. I'm sharing my story. The only one that ain't been fired yet is Kamau. He's still holding strong for the team.
Like, y'all not about to play with me.
All the rest of us. So Jordan, we've been fired favorite failures cohort. You down with the game.
Yes,
and in the spirit of being fired, what I heard really through your story, Quis, is sometimes God introduces us to chaos where we think where we belong and where we think is where we will stay, to be that change, to be that inspiration. But, a win is a win, right? It depends on however you frame your mindset and frame your heart to take those lessons when you threw that bat, to take those lessons of when you just felt like you were in chaos or in an environment where you knew you didn't belong, but it was comfortable. And when we remain comfortable and complacent, we start to persuade ourselves that even though I don't really like it at this school or like it at this job, I'm making good money, I can stay here, I'm comfortable, I'm meeting people. But, sometimes we're forced out of situations that might be embarrassing or that might be uncomfortable. Like you talked about the walk of shame, right? That walk of shame could have been embarrassing, but that walk of shame is you walking into another destiny, is you walking into another opportunity that was set up for you that you couldn't even foresee at that time, right? And your story is really, again, as I wrap this up, a story of a win is a win. You won on the other side, but you had to go through that uncomfortable feeling of walking into a room with HR, of doing that walk of shame that, again, you walked right into somewhere where you're comfortable now, where you're now the dean of, culture. So sometimes you have to take that walk, to our listeners.
Y'all ever seen Temptations when they had kicked dude out of the group? It was like, y'all, that's how I felt, bro. Like, ain't nobody come to see you. Oh, this is like,
yeah. You wish you could work it like me.
Right.
Hey, on a side note, I have this temptation to get so ignorant every time I hear a win is a win. Like, it just hypes me up so much. Like, where I just want to start screaming, like, and like,
what is a win?
Hey, it gets me so ignorant.
And something you said, you talking about?
I wanted to share a favorite failure this week. But if you got a commentary on Quis's,
Yeah. Just real quick. One thing I thought you said that was so powerful. We have this idea of, life is black and white. I was right or I was wrong. But life is the team sport. It's something you said so powerfully, like I was wrong in some situations. There's stuff I could have apologized for. And that would have restored it. Like I shouldn't have thrown the baseball. I could have kept my cool. I didn't have to cuss. I still could have stood on what was right for me, but there were parts you could have done differently. And you said I didn't have I had my pride up in that moment, right? I had a certain level of arrogance, and life is a team sport. And one thing is do you want to be right or do you want us to win? And in that situation, you want it to be right. We've all been there. Nah, I'm not wrong, so I'm gonna choose being right. Versus all the scholars and everybody that you were supporting, they're winning. But the beautiful thing about life is even in our choice of, okay, I choose me right now, it still worked out in your best interest, right? Even in the time, it's this may not have been the right decision as far as my response is. It ended up being because you learned from it is what's so powerful. Where you can look back and say, okay, now my pride was up. Even when I'm right, I can still be wrong.
Yes.
Right. So I just thought that's what I really got from it.
That baseball still in the air to this day, bro.
In the atmosphere. Keith's fingers imprinted on it. He's like, don't say nigga. That's really what it was about.
Oh my God, that's dumb funny.
But it's all you, Kamau, my
man. Mine is not. It actually just happened last week, so it's not like a I guess etched in my mind yet, but it's definitely something I'm never gonna forget. It's not as an elaborate of a story either, so I'm just gonna get straight into it. This past week, or just this season in general, and my two other co-hosts know because we've been kind of going through it together, but taxes has been a very laborious thing to kind of work through, especially once you start getting into entrepreneurship, and it's just complicated. And I mean, this whole process, I never doubted taxes, but to me, it's always kind of been a bit of an afterthought. And just kind of learning what you didn't know and learning how much you don't know. It was a humbling experience. But fast forward, we decided to work with a firm, and I decided to work with a firm this year because just the way my life is planning out, I understand that building wealth, taxes is a part of it, and you need to be strategic with it. There's ways that you can really change the game for you to benefit. I feel like a lot of our culture has just been conditioned to kind of walk the traditional walk of taxes, and other cultures are doing all kind of finessing and finagling, and technically it's legal. They just know what to do, and that knowledge has been passed down. So for me, I was on a quest for that knowledge. Fast forward, had the conversation, really excited to be working with a Black firm, feeling good about just keeping it in-house. We were going through the taxes, going through the line by line, and they're like, oh yeah, you still owe $4,500. And I had to try to swallow it, but still remain professional. And then I just started choking. I was like, wait, excuse me,
you better than me.
$4,500.
Hey yo.
And and so that was 10 minutes into the conversation. We had another 50 scheduled. And when you kind of get something that blindsides you, there's all these emotions that come where you want to just rage, you want to question them, be like, do y'all even know what y'all doing? Did y'all do the tax? Like all this stuff kept coming up inside of me where I just wanted to spaz out. But I also recognized I had another 50 minutes to gain knowledge, and I had a bunch of other questions just about tax strategies and how to really develop my game on this area. And so I just I kind of put it aside, I swallowed it, and I had the rest of the conversation. Great conversation, got a ton of knowledge, expressed gratitude and shout out to them. But over that subsequent days, like I was like, bro, I don't have 4,500. Like, so much is going down in my life when it comes to finances. I just feel like I'm getting poured on right now from credit cards, from family, from taxes. Like, I'm just like, bro, I was expecting to get money, not having to pay almost $5,000. And it was such a humbling experience to me, because the only thing that I'm holding on to that excites me is that, like, I figured out some tax shit that I'm really excited about, that I'm just like, oh, 2025, I'm gonna fuck y'all up. Like, I got a game plan and it's about to be different. Like, I promise you it's not gonna be the same situation. Like, I've been getting finesse, but I promise you it's coming different. But that's still a year and a half away, and that doesn't solve 5Gs right now. And there's no really solution for it. I still got to pay that shit. There's no way out, but it's a failure of mine, in the sense that, like, I was just kind of moving along, like, not worried, trying to make money, trying to hustle, trying to do my thing, and thought I was doing everything. Like, I was given probably like a 60%, really like a 40% to, like, staying organized when it comes to taxes, like, for real. And that's been enough, but you get to a certain level where that's no longer enough, that energy, that attentiveness, and that shit socked me in the fucking mouth, and it's humbling. So I'm sitting in it right now, but it's a favorite failure because I'm excited about what's next.
Oh, and number one, that's real. Number two, if you're trying to get reckless with it, Quis got a homeboy that be wearing Balenciaga and flashing lots of money on Instagram. If you try to, hey, I'm not gonna say it's legit, but I don't know if it's not. Is all I'm saying.
About that whole,
hey, we got opportunity. But on a serious note, that actually reminded me of a favorite failure of mine. Recently, I had to have a real sit down with myself, and I had an opportunity to get a one-on-one client, right? And it was really difficult because, my rhyme, Ruggedly Handsome Young Men's Establishment, this is made for Black men. Like, I stepped into the classroom for Black men and just had an intro consultation with her, talked about, and the price was like $500 a month. And that's steep for, like, people in the community. That's a whole car payment. That's a whole something. And, like, I really wanted to work with her and I was excited. And then, but you tell somebody the money and it's like, I'm straight. And she like, nah, I can do that. I see the value. I'm like, Jesus Christ, now I got to do this. Right. So I started putting on her all together package. But we've been talking, we're going to go into glows and grows in a second, but y'all know my grow has been like getting myself organized, being able to say no, staying focused on the things that I said I'm going to stay focused on. And my failure is I had to tell her that I couldn't work with her as a one-on-one client. Like, despite the money, despite even needing that, right? That would help, like guaranteed income. But my watchword for the year is over deliver. Pivot and proceed is one of the things I said I could over deliver on, right? I'm going to give all of myself to this. And I couldn't say yes to her and say yes to this over here and say yes to my mom and say yes to Rhyme, like, if I said yes to her too. So my failure is being excited for something and having to say that I'm inadequate if I say yes to this. Right? That failure, that was a hard conversation to have somebody excited to work with you and not being able to give them everything. And knowing that if I gave her everything, she would thrive on a different level and the process could be longer. But it's one of my favorites because it gave me another level of confidence. Right? Okay, I can say no. I can say no to a great opportunity because it's not perfectly aligned with the vision. Because I don't have breathing room if I say yes to this. I'm not as sharp if I say yes to this. And it also puts me in a different gear of the stuff I've said yes to. Like, because, like, don't play yourself. You can't say no to her and then wait and then be over here watching Netflix and chilling and eating and put in the work. Don't be a sucker. Like, don't be a coward. Right? So if I'm going to say no, I'm going to, like, put the game on your back and, like, Jordan Game 6. So that's why it's one of my favorite failures. Like, nah, we ain't doing that. If I'm gonna say no to her and I wanted to do this and I was getting paid for it. So yeah, that's definitely one of my favorite failures. Actually saying no when it mattered.
Mm.
But that being said, I think that's a perfect segue into our glows and our grows and the soundtrack. I think I just gave my glow and grow right there, right? My glow is saying no. Like, and that's also I'm gonna do it like Zuri, and I'm gonna blend them both together. It's a glow and a grow because it was hard, boy.
Mm.
It was hard saying that no. I sat with it for days. And when it's a struggle when you avoid making the call. Like, I'm gonna call her tomorrow. No, 2 days from now. And days kept passing where it was a random moment. I'm sitting working on my laptop and I just called her up. And I told her what it was. And it's extremely difficult, but I'm gonna still come work with her a little bit. That's why it's a glow. I didn't say no to everything, right? We're gonna have these 15-minute consultations, these check-ins, build a friendship where just like I check in on my friends, like what's going on with you? You good? Like how's business going? How's this? Doing the same thing just with the framework. So that's why it's a glow. That I said no to what I couldn't do, and I said yes to what I could.
And shout out to her for seeing the value.
No, facts. Facts. That was a beautiful thing. And it also prepared me for what's to come. Because I know like that's gonna be a whole thing. So where I'm in a space where I can't do one-on-one clients and I have to work with with corporations and nonprofits and organizations that already have the people, and I can come in and support them in what they're doing, really making other people's visions a reality. And that will fuel my own. And my soundtrack is this song Advice by Mr. Easy. Mr. Easy, Eazi. And it just comes in so cold. It's like, I don't need advice. And what it spoke to me is you in pockets in life where you need advice, you need perspective, but you also get in pockets where you know exactly what you're supposed to do. Stop playing, right? You don't need to be running for somebody else to tell you that you need to say no to this, that you need to say yes to this. And I just had it on repeat over and over again. Like, it's so profound. He says, like, they are not my size. Like, I came from the back door to the front. My journey was different. So that song, like, yo, listen to that. That's one of those, like, Zuri, like, just riding down the road, it's a vibe. Especially if you're in that pocket of life where, nah, you don't need advice. Not right now. You know exactly what you need to do.
Come on,
so
now.
do it. So yeah, that's me.
To hop in with my grow and glow, I'm gonna group them together again. So I planned my first Atlanta event for my nonprofit by the name of Gentry Spot Incorporated.
Come on now, I better talk to him.
She's her. Y'all better stop playing with her. Oh, don't give me hype. Talk.
This event brought awareness to housing disparities and the effects of gentrification in Atlanta, which is something I'm very passionate about, which is something that I want to make my life's work. And I'm stepping into it. The glow with me planning this event is my very first event in Atlanta, I sold out. I met the event capacity that the venue gave me to not, we couldn't go past 150 individuals for the venue. It's a very intimate venue. So I sold out. That's a glow. I was ecstatic. I mean, when you really start stepping into your purpose, we talk about it all the time. But when you step into it and you act on it and you see that you have a good product and you see that you're not crazy, it is a liberating feeling where I was on cloud 9. So I arrived to the event. It rains that day. Of all days, it rains on the day of my event that I sold out. I'm still glowing, but now my glow has transitioned into a grow very quickly. And I'm going to tell you why. Because although 150 people signed up, 150 people did not show up. And while I'm standing there, I'm looking at the door. I'm just anticipating because I know the product I have. I know this is a mastermind that I have. And I'm waiting for people to flow through the door so they can see what I'm doing and they can understand it and be a part of it and benefit from it, right? but 150 people just don't show up. And I start to feel a little embarrassment. I start to feel uncomfortable, because when you're so loud about your purpose and you're so loud about what you're bringing to the world, if it doesn't pan out perfectly of the vision you have in your mind, you start to think you're a failure in that moment. You start to feel embarrassed. You start to feel like a fraud. And I had those quick thoughts, right? And thanks, I'm going to say their name, thanks to Marion Davis and my mother in the moment, where I both received really like prophetic words from, like, Marion Davis was my guest speaker. And she said this phrase of quality over quantity, because everyone I talked to, my vision was executed 100%. I met people, for the first time, who were writing books on urban development, who were writing books on what I'm delivering through my nonprofit, who are on the grounds doing the same work as me, which are collaboration efforts, which are, relationships that I could build upon. But I was so focused on the numbers because I saw them. But God had to take me aback. Like, you prayed for this. You said you wanted momentum with your passion again and your purpose again. And you have the momentum right now. But I was so focused on the numbers. And we have to learn. My grow is learning how to adapt in the moment if my vision isn't perfect of how I envisioned it, but still being thankful that I received the answer to a prayer and I'm physically standing in that answered prayer. And when I received that advice from people who showed up for me, right? That's another part of it. These two individuals showed up to my first event. They were physically there and pouring in my cup. And it just blew my mind, and my mindset changed. So that's my growing glow of stepping into my passion. But sometimes when you do that, you might be uncomfortable because you have these such high expectations for yourself. But you have to know, if you're standing in the middle of the prayer, acknowledge it and move forward, because it's a win is a win, as I was saying earlier.
Win is a win.
And I'm going to do a second event, and more people are going to show up to that one. I'm going to do a third and a fourth and a fifth, right? But you just have to start, and it's a blessing to even start. So that's my growing glow. My soundtrack, the song is called Rain, and it's by the Teskey Brothers. It's like a soul mixed with like country music, and it was just beautiful. And the first two lines of the song hooked me in. The two questions they ask is that rain or are you crying again? And it touched me because of the growing glow that I just shared, and also some vulnerability that I shared with Kamau and Tunji last week of me just not having a great week. And I had to answer, as I'm listening to the song, I'm answering that question. Is that rain? Or are you crying again? Because rain, how I saw that question and my answer was, see, rain comes and it might be storming, but rain also washes away a lot of filth and feelings that we don't need to hold on to anymore. And that's how I was feeling with that event and the situation that I was going through that I shared. And I had to learn that just because you might be crying, it could be a form of rain, that you're just washing away what doesn't serve you anymore. And I'm gonna wrap this up, and I just want the listeners to, continue to be vulnerable, but ask yourself that question: is this rain or are you crying again? And once you answer that question, I think it'll give you a better view of where you actually stand in that moment.
No, just real quick, that's hella powerful.
Yes.
Is that rain or are you crying again? It made me think of just what you said. Like, is that a glow or is it a grow? Like, it's both.
It's both.
Really, like, is that rain or are you crying again? Both. Both.
And that's okay too.
It's a blessing and a burden. And it's that's real. That was powerful.
Quis, you got it, big dog.
Yes, sir. My glow. Well, I'm gonna start with my area of growth, because my area of growth is gonna lead into the growth. My area of growth is, I think it's just, I'm gonna go back to education. And when I say mine, it's like it's ours, a team and a family, like the culture. I just want my people to do better when it comes to this education stuff and valuing education when it comes to their scholars and sending their kids to school. And I could use the example of cell phones. I just recently, last Wednesday, I took up a young scholar's cell phone. She identifies as Latino. And I called her mother and told her I had to take her cell phone because she was using it during class. And I think her teacher gave her multiple warnings on the cell phone. When I called the mother was like, "Oh no, keep that cell phone till Friday." I was like, "Oh wow, are you sure about that?" She was like, "Yes." I was like, I bet. So I communicated to the scholar. I gave the scholar a reflection. She reflected. She was very respectful because she understood. She was pissed, but I gave her that reflection. She truly reflected. I got her phone, gave her phone back, and it was a good day. Mother support and everything. And I get a lot of support from my Latino parents. But when it comes to us, man, it's times where I just put my phone down and just put it on mute and just listen to the parents just going off on the phone about a cell phone. But then the reason why we're taking the phone is because they're wasting their academic time and they're actually failing their classes.
Yeah.
And that it goes back into my glow is because I'm gonna read this quote. It says, "If you slow down to help someone who's afraid of freedom, you will both get caught. So you tried your best, now leave them." And so as an educator, I'm gonna be honest, like I chose education because I felt like I could save everyone. I got into this work like, bro, I'm about to put the whole Black community on my back, you know what I'm saying? We're gonna do this thing, but it becomes draining to a point where it's like, now that I'm at the school with predominantly Latino scholars, I'm gonna be honest, I'm less stressed. Like, it's a lot of things that I don't dealing with my own people. And so my glow is I appreciate the work that I do outside of the classroom through energy converters, because we're in a position where we're educating parents on like things to maneuver, things that they should know and how to maneuver throughout the education system, because they're not going to teach it to us. So I'm providing you with this information because I'm doing my job by providing you with this information. Now, what you do with it, that's on you. But it's just like I sleep well at night knowing that I'm like the education translator. It's just like I could take this and I could translate it to these parents and to these scholars, and it's like teaching you ways on the maneuver, and I could focus my attention on the ones who value this information versus me trying to tug and pull on people trying to like bring them up, because it just causes too much stress. Because when I get home at night, I'm gonna be honest, there's some scholars that I truly like, they're still on my mind. As I get to the house, it's like, dang, who's holding them accountable? They got so much potential to accomplish these things, but it's just like, where are they going to end up at? And every time I look at Oakland, I see the glass on the ground from somebody's car being broken into. I think about how did the education system fail that person, and it's just like, we can't save everyone. So let me just focus this attention on the people who want to be saved. And so we can go from there. And let me focus on raising my son. So that's my glow. It's like coming to that reality of like, I got to take care of myself for me to take care of others. And I can't do it by trying to bring everybody on board and get everybody to freedom. I already know Harriet Tubman, they gave her hell back in the day, bro.
No, I don't know if you know this story where she pulled out a pistol on old boy because they were in the woods going through it, and he was about to run back. She was like, either you gonna be free or you gonna be free from this body, from this thing you call life. It's one or the other. Freedom from bondage or freedom from life. And he's like, all right, yeah, you're right. Let's go up. We can go to Canada. Right? So, and much props to you just in what you said, in the sense of, now there's some things I don't have to deal with in my job now. And the so ironic, the name is energy converters, because now you have the energy to put into this different pocket that directly impacts the parents, the students, in a different way that's highly necessary, in a way that gives them the voice and the autonomy of, you have the information, now what are you going to do with it?
Yes.
And for me, it sounded so much like wisdom, because you know how they say you can take a horse to water, but you can't force them to drink. Right? What you're doing is, like, Keys is like, I'm going to the water anyway. So you take a bucket, you take that water, and then you go back to where the horse is at. You take a sip of the water, be like, nah, this water's good. And you need some of this. And it's right there on the table. It's right there in the bucket by your feet for you to drink it. And I think that is a service in itself. And that's powerful in itself.
Oh, my bad. I got my soundtrack. My soundtrack is that Ace Hood, To Whom It May Concern, because it's like, I don't know who needs to hear this, but to whom it may concern, like he's dropping some dope knowledge in that one.
Okay, bet.
This announcement. I also wanted to just comment by giving you your flowers, because so many times you hear in education, it starts at home, but there's really no incentive for educators, school systems, or really, like, they don't help home, like they help the kids because that's the responsibility that they have, but the incentive is not really there to help home. And I feel like you take in something that we all hear, we all know, and you're like, nah, like, for real though, like it does start at home. And let me equip the people who set the foundation, who set the rules, who set everything at home. Let me equip them for success, because I know it's going to trickle down to the scholars. So just major flowers on that. Glow and grow. Oh my gosh. I don't know, honestly. Like it's I guess I'm glowing. I'm still kind of, to be honest, I'm still kind of off of the glow of Invest Fest, which was a handful of weeks ago, and just really getting getting excited, getting like that reignition for my potential, for what's possible, for what's coming. Like, I just feel like it's inevitable at this point, but I just got to keep my head down. But I'm very excited. I'm just excited. So that's my glow. My grow is something that you said, Tunji, that I've heard you say before, but my God, is it true? Where it's that if I'm turning down opportunities, what the hell do I look like sitting on the couch watching Netflix or watching YouTube or wasting that time, and getting real familiar with the opportunity cost, where what I'm turning down, or what I'm doing with Netflix and all these other things, I'm trading that off for opportunities that I could be doing right now. And so there's a part of the journey of success that requires patience. But I think even more than patience is focus. Like, you can't just wait for the shit to blow up or to succeed. Like, you got to stay focused. It's not just a time game. It's a how much time you're putting in the game. So that is my grow, is staying engaged with the time that I'm putting in the game. My soundtrack has been my boy Rex Life Raj. I have
Oakland.
I've been taking it back to this father figure 2 Flourish. And my God, this album, I feel like where he was in his career was like, he was blowing, but it wasn't like major, but it was enough to know that, like, I'm certified, like I'm not going nowhere. I'm in this game. And so I feel like what spoke to me is just, it's almost like going back through somebody's path who's been successful, and hearing that self-talk, hearing the conversations their parents were having with them, hearing the conversations of their friends, hearing those early achievements where it's like, yeah, this person's just destined to blow. And this album, the one song that I've been rocking with is More Than Enough, but just the album in general, it's just been speaking to me, like just running it from top to bottom again and again. So yeah, that Rex Life Raj.
And boy, that whole album, that Too Free on there, the first 2 tracks, stupid, thousands of plays, thousands. Boy,
they're More Than Enough. I'm with you, Kamau. Like, you listen to that, it just makes you just want to look in the mirror and just, it's amazing. Good pick.
Yeah, real talk. Hey, yeah, nah, for real. But before we slide out of here, Quis, I want to give you an opportunity. I know you did it on the IG Live. Where can they find you on social? What you got going on? What's going to help the parents? What's going to help you? Talk to them.
Yes, sir. Y'all can find me on IG at Quis.Evans. That's QUIS.EVANS. Click the link well, not the link in my bio, but go on the energy converters. I have that little tag in my bio. Click the link in that bio, and therefore it will take you straight to our Oakland report. And even if you don't stay in Oakland, it's still something beneficial to indulge in, because what it does is it breaks down the levels of accountability. There's shared accountability in education. There's the system, there's our educators, and then there's the end users. And the end users make up our parents, our scholars, and also the community. Because even if you're not in the field of education, if you're an adult, you still play a major role as well, because it takes a village. And that's one of those things that we have in the South, where we understand we have a village. And so just taking in that knowledge and sharing that knowledge with parents out there, because again, I really want us to like elevate in this education space, because there's a lot of things there's a lot of systems that are put in place to keep us from thriving. And I think we got to stop begging and stop demonstrating that agency and doing what we need to do to thrive.
Come on now, brother. And the link will be in the podcast descriptions, just to make it easy for y'all.
Yes, sir.
And I'll go ahead and double down, because he said, like, because everybody isn't in education. I would argue by that. It takes a village. Everybody is.
Yes.
When you get your car broken into, that was your little brother that we didn't look out for. Right? That's your cousin. That's your nephew that we dropped the ball to slip through the cracks. So hopefully, like, you looking at the energy converters and what they're doing out in Oakland, somebody's in LA, like, we need to do this too. Somebody's in Atlanta, like, we need to do this too. Somebody's in Memphis, somebody's in New York, somebody is, because we, like you said, the culture, like skin folk, we just got different rhythms, right? And we need to like be peeping game from each other. So really take the time to go to that page, eat off of it, and hopefully as you go through that and you listen to this episode, you looked at your life and you saw anywhere you need to pivot. So for all those pivots that you see that, okay, I need to make, may they all be followed by a proceed. And never forget that we love you. Till next time, y'all. Yay! A win is a win.
Don't get me started.